Hey guys, Danny here with Danny Gustin Fitness. Got Ryan Nepereny, one of our amazing personal trainers here. Ryan's been with us several years. He is a certified personal trainer through the National Academy of Sports Medicine. He has a kinesiology degree from ISU and is going on to physical therapy school here soon. Ryan has some great insights, not only as a personal trainer, his perspective of his experience working with chiropractors, considering going to chiropractic school, working with physical therapists, going on to physical therapy school, some of the challenges of school debt and other things you would want to consider when getting out of high school and considering what you want to do for the rest of your life. So I think this could be a great listen for a lot of people. I had a lot of fun doing it. Ryan's a great guy, so appreciate you guys being with us. We're live.
Very cool.
Ryan.
What's going on, Danny?
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
We just decided the new podcast name will be Danny and Fwens.
Fwens, not friends.
Friends.
Yeah.
So Ryan here is like my work little brother. So I'm hoping this podcast stays on the rails. We'll just have to see what happens.
God.
So, but seriously, I am excited to have you on. I think there's a lot of cool things to talk about as far as just your perspective on wanting to be going back to physical therapy school and some of the challenges associated with that.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's very relatable for a lot of young people.
Yeah.
And maybe people who aren't so young, right? But want a new start.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get into some of that. First thing I want to start with, though, is not a lot of people know that you are Filipino.
Yes. So I'm technically 50%. My mom is the Filipino one, and then my dad is he's half like Czech or something like that. But
yeah, you were just talking about what's the thing Vivian brought? Empanadas. And then you go and say, this is what I grew up on.
Oh, yeah. But the real Filipino one is the one with like the raisins in it. I don't really like the raisins, but
okay. Raisins.
Yeah, I don't know why.
So,
you want to know something? Those do have raisins.
do they really?
There's just not a lot of them. Now that you said that,
I don't think I had any in the one that I
maybe
had.
these didn't today, but she's brought them before.
really?
They've had raisins, right?
And so, is it still meant to be savory, or is it
I don't know. I think they're trying to like balance the like sweet and savory. I don't like
Okay.
the raisins. It's kind of weird for me, but
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, have you guys ever had Thanksgiving stuffing that people lean a little bit too much into the sweet end of things?
yeah.
Yeah, not mine either. I would prefer something like fried food, just maybe dates, bacon wrapped dates, stuff like that, or
Even that's a little. I
Yeah.
don't really like the combination.
well, dates are kind of even mushy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhat of a texture thing.
Yeah.
One of my clients hates mushy things. It's so funny because he's this 60-year-old, successful, had his own company,
Yeah.
family man, and I can basically get him to crumble if I start talking about things like bananas, avocados. He will just start shuddering.
Yeah.
Do you have any texture stuff?
I personally don't. But as you know, my girlfriend eats nothing.
Yeah.
So
So why didn't you explain? What do you mean eats nothing?
So.
Just so no one is,
Yeah.
too concerned about your girlfriend.
Well, if she sees this, I don't know if she'll be too happy with me, but hey,
It's a little too late for that.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. But she has this thing where she has like she doesn't like certain textures. So, for example, she doesn't like she hasn't tried foods that like me or you like kind of take for granted. So she's never had red meat before. She's never had
Never.
ever. Like her mom verifies this.
Okay.
She's never had red meat. She had her first like chicken sandwich her freshman year of college. So like the combination of like chicken and bread together, which is crazy. But she hasn't had, I think she's had most fruits, vegetables. I don't know if she's ever touched. So her diet is like cheese pizza, pretzels. What else does she like? She likes McDonald's French fries.
So for anyone who is concerned, I can verify Ryan has a very cute girlfriend, and it is not a 5-year-old we're talking about right now.
I hope not.
But I mean, seriously though, when you're talking
Yeah,
about that, that's what it
yeah.
makes me think of, right?
But she has like abs. And which is crazy because like everybody's metabolism is just so different.
Yeah.
So it makes it tough.
Is that all it is? You think it's just, does she eat?
I mean, she doesn't need a large volume.
Okay.
But even when she does, she wouldn't gain a pound.
Does she exercise?
She does CrossFit.
Oh, she does CrossFit.
Yeah, she does CrossFit occasionally. She's trying to do a little bit more into like the gym setting too.
Okay.
But yeah, she does CrossFit.
So good portion control combined with picky eating, combined with working out, and maybe some good genetics.
I guess so. Genetics definitely play a part in it.
Yeah, because she's pretty ripped, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how. It's not fair.
I just explained it to you.
I know, but it's not fair, is what I'm saying. I know how, but it's just not fair.
Well, if you had to ask me, is it fair that someone who does portion control, works out, has some decent genetics, is ripped? I'd say that's actually pretty fair.
But the thing is, she doesn't try. Like, she doesn't try portion control. She just eats whenever she's not hungry anymore.
So you're just saying that when you say she's not trying, she's just naturally predisposed to having a feeling of fullness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, she just doesn't need a lot.
I can relate to that too because my brother, my dad, me, we can put food away,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
right? It's just as long as I can remember, even when I was a twig,
Yeah.
you know, like 59 pounds in 6th grade, you know, and I'm trying to, part of that's because I was on Adderall and Ritalin and throwing away my lunch most days, but when I would eat, I'd be trying to smash food, you know, I'd eat as much as I could.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was a cultural thing where just saw my dad put some food away. He'd have friends over for wrestling events and football. But yeah, I mean, even as an adult, I look at like one of my best friends, Leo. His mom loved having us over. So they're American, but mom immigrated from Brazil. So did the dad.
Yeah.
And so she'd make these amazing meals. I'd come over for dinner, and Leo and his brother would. I swear I would joke that they would get full from sniffing food. They'd eat a bite or two, move the food around a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're 19 years old. Why aren't you not eating food?
Yeah.
But then the mom comes up to me. She's like, Danny, you want more, right? I'm like, yeah, I do. I do. So I can relate to that because I do see that in some of my clients even where I'm sure it's a bit of that nature versus nurture. Where you have some people who, you know, again, maybe they saw their parents put some food away, right? Growing up, that was just what was normal. But I think there's a genetic component to it too. Like one of my clients, Miriam, I was so amazed by her. She told me she would cut a chocolate turtle. Do you know what a chocolate turtle is?
Yeah, the one with like the peanut in it or something like that.
It's like a caramel, some sort of nut, chocolate. It's good, right? She would freeze them, and then get them out of the freezer and then cut them into thirds.
Really?
And she would take a third of it and just say she was completely satisfied.
How?
That's a great question.
That's crazy.
But maybe it's a bit like your girlfriend. Just certain people, I don't know if it's dopamine or what. Do you have any thoughts on that, Nico?
Like you said, it's just something genetically with some sort of chemicals, right?
That's
Some
where-
people are different than others.
It's where you and I have spoken about this before. I would love to have like a legit someone who understands endocrinology on here.
Mm-hmm. That'd
Just
be really
like
cool.
really understands dopamine and serotonin and leptin and ghrelin and all these things that dictate so much of what we do. I just think that'd be amazing. So, anyways, Katie is your girlfriend. Katie, I think you deserve your props for being lean, even if Ryan doesn't want to give you that credit.
I mean, I give her the credit for sure, but I mean,
You're just jelly.
no, I just want her to eat better.
Yeah, not
For her
eat,
sake, for her
not
sake.
eat chicken fingers and
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
else it
Yeah.
was.
Chicken
Grilled.
fingers, cheese pizza, pretzels.
You're gonna.
That's
hear
pretty
it when
much-
She sees this podcast.
Yeah, she's gonna kill me.
Yeah. Well,
But it's good intentions, like just because I want her to be healthy.
yeah, and that makes sense. And I think for a lot of people, that probably comes more to the forefront as they get older.
Yeah.
You do some of those 30, 40-year-old checkup plus get your blood work and
Yeah.
you're like, oh man, my cholesterol's super high. Maybe I shouldn't just be
Yeah.
I should eat a vegetable or something like that, right?
Yeah. Well, especially
So-
because we're kind of like in that health field too.
Yeah.
And as personal trainers, we're always trying to help people.
Yeah.
So I think some of that comes from wanting to help her a little bit too. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kinda
I mean, we do that all the
ingrained into
time,
us,
right? So when you met Katie, was that at school?
that was at school, yeah. So
Okay.
we started off as best friends, and then
I'm always a little jealous of people who do that.
I got out of the friend zone. And the thing is,
I got out of the friend zone.
The
There
thing
we go.
is- the thing
Hold
is-
on. We should just make the whole podcast around that. Guys, tune in. Here's how you get out of the
but
friend
you know what's
zone.
even more interesting? She's the one that started things, and I mean, yeah.
Forget a podcast around. We should just start a religion about Ryan, apparently.
No, but we started off as friends, and then I think it was we were in Nashville, and one of our really close friends that we were both friends with, he's like, oh, you guys would look like really cute together, because we're always like messing around with each other.
Nice wingman.
I didn't even know this happened though until
Was he
she
trying to
told
plant
me.
the seed?
I don't know what he was trying to do. Maybe he was, but we were always like messing with each other. We would always like joke around. We'd be like bumping elbows, stuff like that. But
Okay.
she's like, no, I don't think so. And then, and the turning point when she felt something else. This is so stupid. So there's a picture of
Look
me.
at Ryan getting all.
No,
This is love, guys.
it's because I don't know how to react to it. But I was in the car.
Just to make it clear, I mean, this is all definitely getting aired. So.
Oh, I know. I know. I was.
Sorry.
No, I was in the car and we were driving home, and so I'm weird. I bought this little pig that
Okay.
lights up and oinks, and so I was oinking it the whole trip.
Okay.
And they were obviously getting annoyed. I was oinking it at like bars and everything. Why? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I fell asleep with it hanging on my pinky,
Okay.
and she took a picture of it because obviously I looked ridiculous.
Yeah.
And she's like, that was the point. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Are you sure? So I fell asleep with my little keychain, and she still has it.
Yeah.
She actually stole it from me.
So the girl who only eats chicken fingers and Lunchables and basically other childlike food
Yeah.
fell in love with the guy who was oinking a pig all day. And then,
Like a reality TV show.
seriously.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Hey, love can happen in mysterious ways.
I guess so, yeah.
Kudos to you. It seems to be working out so far for
Yeah.
you. So you went to college for kinesiology,
Yep.
right? So what made you want to do that?
So I've always enjoyed like fitness things. So before that, I was thinking about automotive engineering because
Okay.
my grandfather was an engineer.
What is the difference between automotive engineering and being a mechanic?
So he was mechanical.
Okay.
So he was mechanical. He was well renowned in like valves and stuff like that. So that didn't really interest me.
Okay.
I've always loved cars. In high school, I didn't really have much interest besides like my automotive classes. So I was like, well, I want to do something in automotive that would make me money, plus get to work with cars,
Okay.
which it's still a passion today.
Yeah.
I just want to keep it as more of like a passion thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
That makes sense. I think a lot of people understand that.
Yeah, and so my dad got me into working out after baseball, and I always
And you played baseball in
in high school up
Okay.
until like junior year.
what position?
I was second. I did a little bit of short and then center field.
Okay.
So I was mainly like
Second short in center field?
yeah.
What was your
yeah.
favorite?
I did like center field because that one you're kind of like the ringleader.
Dude, I'm just thinking of Ryan just playing with his hair in
All
center
right,
field.
all right.
I like center field because I could
dude,
just
you
get
did-
distracted.
You had to be the fast one in center field, and you're kind of coordinating the whole outfield.
Okay.
Plus some of the infield because you take precedence.
Yeah.
If there's like a pop fly in between you guys.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I really like that position, but second was pretty cool because that's when you have to be fast.
It's pretty dynamic,
Yeah,
short and second.
yeah. So, but after baseball, my dad, he used to be a bodybuilder, so he really got me into fitness and lifting and all that. And so my friends primarily didn't really lift at that time.
Okay.
And so I kind of showed them what to do based on what my dad showed me. And I really enjoyed that. So I was like, after college, I want to do something in the field. I don't know what yet. So I wanted to pursue personal training. I've always wanted to.
Okay.
Since like after baseball.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of got me into it.
Dude, that's awesome. And I don't know if you know this, but kind of a small world situation. Ryan's dad works with Joe Osano, the guy who
Really?
builds our websites, and Lester's cousin.
Wow.
Yeah, and I found that out after the fact. Did you know? Why would you have known that when you applied here?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah. So it's so
That's
cool,
crazy.
right? Like just total small world thing, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been verified. Your dad is humongous,
He is a big guy.
right?
For sure.
Like, is he huge, or like how? If we're talking scaling of huge, are we talking like
so
in the Arnold category, like bodybuilding category? Are we talking just dad bod? What are we talking here?
No, he's pretty built. He's definitely he's a little bit shorter than me, but he's like, for example, I probably weigh 182, 83.
Okay.
My dad's probably like 210.
210,
Yeah. He's pretty built.
just solid.
Yeah, he's solid.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's probably wider than me.
What are his numbers? Does he have some big, like, good numbers on the?
He was
Does
not-
he do the traditional lifts or?
He does, but he keeps it more controlled now in his older age. So it's
Okay.
more like maintenance and preventative stuff like that.
Okay,
But
that's great.
I mean, I think the only number that I remember him telling me is he definitely benched over 4 plates in his prime.
In his prime.
Yeah, so he was big into that, but he was mainly into bodybuilding, so not really powerlifting and getting numbers.
Okay.
So-
Okay. Yeah, my dad was a power lifter.
Yeah, you told me
So
about
when
that.
we
That's
were
pretty
growing
cool.
up, we could get into this. My dad can beat up your dad
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
conversation.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's cool. I mean, it definitely influences you,
for sure.
right? When
For
you're
sure.
seeing someone who is pursuing fitness, strength,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just in an endeavor in the physical categories, right? It's hard not to have something like that rub off on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was a bit of an influence for you in wanting to pursue kinesiology,
Mm-hmm.
and then your initial thought was getting into personal training,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I wanted to get something out there. But then I also had this other passion because my mom's a nurse practitioner. So she was always kind of surrounded in that medical field and that sort of thing. And when I was in college, A&P was like one of my favorite classes.
Yeah.
So I knew I wanted to do something that kind of combines the two. So like helping people through movement plus but helping people in general. So I think that's kind of what led me. Well, at first I was interested in chiropractic.
Yeah.
And then it's a crazy story, but Dr. Joe moved in when I basically got accepted into a chiro school in West Palm Beach, Florida. I don't know
So-
if you remember that.
Yeah, I do remember that. So just to kind of connect some dots for people, Ryan has been training here a couple of years.
Yes,
He's been thinking about
yes.
moving on to chiropractic school. And somewhere along the line, we ended up having a physical therapist operate his business out of our health club. His name is Dr. Joe. He's been on the podcast for, those who have been watching. And Ryan, tell me about how that you were thinking about chiropractic school.
Yes.
And, obviously you and I spoke about it a lot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're just kind of going back and forth. Hard decision to make, right?
Yeah.
A lot of factors too, which is kind of what I was mentioning earlier in the video, was just some of the challenges you've had, I think, are very relatable.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is I never considered PT only because when I first got into Illinois State, I don't remember what my first class was, but we had a career counselor come in. And we were listing off all the careers that we wanted to do. And someone in my class said PT. And she gives us a little bit of information about each career. And she was like, unless you have like a 3.8 or 3.7 GPA, you won't even be considered. And so right then and there, I kind of put off PT. Like, I'm not going to get a 3.8, 3.7.
Yeah.
I'm not like a genius or anything.
Ryan's like, I'm just too busy like oinking pigs. Like, who has time to study
When I
and
can
get
oink
good
a
grades?
pig. I actually named it. It's called Peppa.
Well, that's
I know, but like it came to me.
that's like
in the
having a
moment.
dinosaur named Barney.
Yeah.
Let's just move on.
Anyway, right then and there, I kind of put off PT. I was like, "There's no way I'm gonna get in. I'm not even gonna try."
Yeah.
So then another career that I wanted to get into, not knowing much background about each, it was chiropractic because it actually helped me with my shoulder when I was in baseball.
Okay.
So I was like, well, it's kind of in that medical field, and it's also about helping people. So I was like, well, since high school, I wanted to do chiropractic because of that experience.
Yeah.
So all throughout college, I only considered chiropractic. I was like, this is what I want to do. I even took like an internship class that allowed me to do it. And I think looking back at it now, when I was in the chiropractic office, I thought there was like more to it. You know what I mean? So essentially, when I was in my internship, all I saw was it was basically like a factory. One guy goes in, cracks their back, manipulates them a little bit, and I was like, "Is this really it?" And so, which also had me worried. But then I was like, "Well, I've always wanted to do chiropractic, so maybe I should just like stick to the path, and maybe it's just this clinic." But it felt like more like a factory of just like patients in, patients out. So the good thing about this one is they would send the patients to rehab, but the actual chiropractic side, I thought there was more to it because the chiropractor that I went to when I was in baseball was a little bit more involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, well, I don't know what to go based on which experience, whether I should pursue chiropractic or not.
Yeah, and just to be fair, there is a lot of variability in any profession.
Yes, of
right?
course, of
you
course.
know, it's I'm not sure why, and actually we're going to be having on a very well-renowned chiropractor, nationally renowned
That's
chiropractor
awesome.
here. The one I was just telling you about, one of my client's brothers actually, who's spoken in front of boards of surgeons, and
That's awesome.
he's very passionate. I would love to talk to him about this, but it is interesting how for every amazing chiropractor there is who helped you like in your baseball years, right? Or even some of the ones I know in the area, right? I tried to get you in touch with Brady, Dr. Brady McDaniel's, Elite Recovery Chiropractic here in Naperville. He's amazing. He helped my wife during one of her pregnancies. But I've also met with kind of what you were mentioning, more of the cookie cutter, right? And I wonder what that is. Is that because there's more insurance involvement in physical therapy?
For sure.
Right? Like there's very specific ways you can treat people, and there's a bit more cash-based elements in chiropractics. I'm not entirely sure why you end up getting such a wide range. Because you get that in PT, but not quite as much. I think probably the worst thing you're going to hear in PT is not someone being a quack, but maybe just taking 3 people on at once.
Yeah.
And you never really work with a physical therapist. And,
Yeah.
Right? You don't really get as much of the, oh, they don't know what they're doing, or
Exactly.
they're being maybe unethical or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I can't wait to have him on because,
That'd be interesting.
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
I'm sure he has some interesting things to say about it.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, I was telling Nico here, one of these days I'd like to just have a chiro and a PT on at the same time and just be like,
Oh gosh.
guys, like marriage counseling, let's work this, let's settle this.
Yeah, and I didn't realize how much of a air quote beef there was between the two. When the good chiro that I saw actually worked hand in hand with a PT.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of clinics need to run like that almost, just to be successful for the actual patient. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? In the end, we're both trying to help. We're both trying to help someone restore kind of their movement. So I think working hand in hand would be the most beneficial way of practicing and coexisting. You know what I mean?
Have you noticed that it seems more of the beef coming from the PTs towards the chiros and not the other way? Because in my experience, I hear more physical therapists
Yeah.
ready to kind of talk down the idea of being a chiropractor than I hear chiropractors, for better or for worse, seem to be just unaffected by that. They're kind of in their lane, and they're
Yeah.
not necessarily too concerned about what's happening
Yeah.
with PTs.
Yeah, for sure. Even in forums when I was researching what to do, when I was on the fence between chiro and PT. That's what it seems like. Like all along the forums, they're like, it's a lot more physical therapists that almost like feel more threatened in a way.
Yeah.
You know
you
what I
think
mean?
it's threatened?
I don't know what it is. I just think there's different ideologies, and I think with people in general, you know you're gonna have some people who have like a lack of thinking outside of their own space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As a possible solution. So I think it's just unwilling to kind of see from the other side.
I could see that. Well, someday when you're a PT, you can be the change you want to see. You can bring healing about.
I'm hoping.
'Cause I'm sure you'll be collaborating with chiros and things like that.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely a space in healthcare for chiros.
Yeah.
And I think they're really important still. But working together, I feel like will just bring the best experience for our patients in general.
So I think that's an important question. What is, obviously, again, this would probably be a better question to ask someone who is a chiropractor and is a physical therapist, but you having the perspective of having spent a lot of time shadowing Dr. Joe, interned with chiropractors, thought about both professions, what do you think is a good layman explanation for the distinction between the two? Like, why would someone go to a chiropractor and why would someone go to a physical therapist?
That's a good question. So I think if it's a little bit more, I mean, Dr. Joe is a really good spine PT. So possibly doing things like, if it's more spine focused, have it be more chiro. And then after that session, after they were manipulated, kind of sending them off to a PT to kind of restore that chain of movement. I feel like that would be a really good solution. Because that's kind of what the successful chiropractor why I liked chiropractic during my baseball years. That's kind of how that clinic was run. So if it was heavy in like spine or manipulation, the chiro would take over. The PT would do a little bit, but kind of almost like stay in his own lane and do more like muscular movement.
Yeah.
So I think a combination of those two would be a really good
I think that's
solution.
a great explanation. In fact, it's very in line with mine in that the best chiropractors I've met seem to be just physical therapists who specialize in the spine, right? Like a lot of the way they treat is very much emphasizing stretching techniques, manual therapy, isolated exercises, functional movement, right? It's very much like what a PT would do,
Exactly.
just maybe with an emphasis on the spine. And added twist of, it does seem that chiropractors, on one hand, have a bit more of an emphasis on pain management. Like I think because historically it's been a bit more cash-based than physical therapists have been. Someone who doesn't necessarily want to go to the doctor and then do 12 weeks of physical therapy, but does want to get through the weekend, might be more likely to go to a massage therapist or get a couple appointments with a chiropractor, get some like electric stim, manual therapy, maybe an adjustment, hoping that can just get them functional again in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, exactly.
Where I think PTs tend to deal more in the long-term changes, right? Like, hey, I'm going to need you for 6 weeks, 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Let's nip this in the butt, address the source of it, so that way this is just over.
Yeah.
And so it's less about pain management and more about just addressing the root cause.
For sure.
So to your point, I think both of those have a place. And I think when you do see there are more PTs getting into some cash-based practices.
More and more, yeah.
And so you'll probably end up seeing a bit more of that stuff even in PT, just the idea of, hey, if I can help you in 2 to 3 visits and just give you some stuff to do and maybe see you a month from now, then why do I need to see you 3 times a week for 12 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And I think from talking even to Dr. Joe or even Jerry, the last PT we had on the podcast, that seems to be somewhat influenced by the business side of these large medical practices too.
Yes.
Right? Like get them in 3-4 times a week, get them on for 12 weeks, even when I worked for a physical therapy clinic, a lot of the times you could see people were pretty much good after a certain point.
Yeah.
They were either good in a relatively reasonable amount of time, maybe halfway, 3/4 through their visits, or they were never going to be good and they needed probably something else, right? So it's interesting. I want to learn more and more about it, and I'm excited for you because obviously you're going to have a deep dive into all of this stuff.
Yeah, eventually. We'll see when.
Eventually.
Well, PT in general,
Yeah.
school is very competitive, so
Yeah.
hopefully.
But so right now the phase you're in is just getting your GPA up?
Yeah, so what I'm doing right now is, so I got a bunch of experience with Dr. Joe. Right now, I'm doing it casually. I'm shadowing the dually clinic that that worked under Dr. Joe at the time.
Yeah.
Back in Aurora. So I'm doing that. I'm studying for the GRE. So it's just like it's like SAT for undergrads.
Yeah, for med specifically, right? Like pre-med?
No, I think engineers take it too.
Oh, okay.
So it's very general.
Okay.
So it's just like math.
Oh, you know what? Am I thinking of the MCAT?
That's the MCAT. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
MCAT, I think lawyers take the LSAT, something like that.
Okay.
But I'm taking the GRE. I'm doing shadowing at that one clinic just 1 day a week, and then I'm retaking a little bit of prereqs. So
Okay.
a lot of PT students, what they'll do is after graduating undergrad, they'll take what's called a gap year.
Okay.
It's very common for PT students unless they get direct entry. Some colleges have that, but it's if you get accepted right away.
Okay.
So during the gap year, it's pretty much for all prospective PT students to kind of make their application a little bit better. They're retaking prereqs, they're getting experience, they're taking the GRE, stuff like that. So that's kind of what the checklist you got to do if you're a potential PT student trying to get into school.
Yeah. So some of the big challenges that you have had correct me if I'm wrong, clarify, as far as considering one chiropractic versus PT, and then now that you've decided to be a PT, going on to PT school is one, your GPA, right? But two, you've kind of tossed and turned about the financial side of it.
Oh, for
too,
sure.
right? And I think
Yeah.
that's very relatable for a lot of people who are in a phase of their life where they're younger, they're trying to get themselves established, but they're staring down this mountain of potential debt, right? And so how has that affected you in making this decision, and where are you at with just that whole thought process?
Yeah, so I mean, it definitely plays a big part because state schools are obviously a lot cheaper, and actually like significantly cheaper. But unfortunately, it's for the top of the top students. So, for example, if you have like that 3.7, 3.8 GPA, you're more likely than someone who has less but have more experience go to a state school where it's cheaper.
Okay.
So a lot of these PT schools are private institutions. The one I want to go to, unfortunately, is for profit. So a lot of these schools will jack up their tuition rates, because they know that it's a little bit easier to get into, comparatively to a state school, which is cheaper, but even harder to get into. So
Gotcha.
they kind of use that to their advantage.
So what is the average debt that a PT school student takes on post-bachelor's degree?
So
Do you know?
including undergrad tuition costs?
Sorry, post-bachelor's degree.
Okay, post-bachelor. You're probably looking at, for private institutions, you could be looking at $100,000 plus. But they do have a program called the PSLF.
Okay.
PSLF. Yeah, so you work for a nonprofit or government agency for 10 years. You get the rest. You still have to make the minimum payments, but you get the rest of your loans forgiven.
So you are committing to making 10 years of payments, working for the government institution, getting paid, obviously. Or nonprofit.
Yeah.
And then as soon as that 10-year mark's over, regardless of how much debt is left, it's over?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so you got to be really on it, and you got to send in application. The place that you work at has to be a qualified place, so you have to get it approved, or I think they have like a list of institutions that are like nonprofit that qualify.
Okay.
But I read somewhere that you have to get it like approved by your manager that you've worked this amount of time.
Yeah, I can
Some
see
people
that.
have had issues of getting like managers and stuff like that to get it approved.
Yeah.
To sign off on it, but yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely, that's a lot to consider, right? And so who told you about the PSLF? Is that something you just got on your own through
Research, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because that's a lot, right? I mean, gosh, I would love to know. I think that's something more students, high school students, undergrad students need to know, like tips on how to reduce tuition costs.
Oh, 100%.
And then also, gosh, budgeting, right? Because I wonder what is, on average, how much time would it take someone to pay off $100,000? I wonder.
Oh, it's got to be a lot. Well, not only that, a lot of, especially like even PT students, we're paying off undergrad too.
Yeah.
So it all adds up. It all adds to the fact that whether you can move out of state, whether you have to stay in state, whether your living costs will be on loans, whether you can swing it and get a part-time job outside of PT school.
Yeah.
Which is it's really tough, but there's a lot of decisions to make especially when you're in any graduate program.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm sure it could be wildly different if you're working. For example, I respect the heck out of my dad because now granted, education costs were a bit different in the early 80s than they are today. But my dad pretty much worked full time while he was in college.
Man.
I think he was a bar manager, a restaurant manager, so who knows how much, adjusted for inflation that was then. But still, I think he ended up pretty much covering most of his school.
That's amazing.
Right.
There are some people that can do that. Which is crazy.
You're willing to work full time. I'm
Yeah.
not sure that would end up in a more or entry-ish. He was in management but still relatively entry level, being a manager of like a bar or restaurant, right? Especially if it's just like he went to ISU too.
Oh, did he really?
So especially if it's like a local bar, right? We're not talking somewhere in Chicago or right. So yeah, it's very interesting. There's all those factors to consider about out of state, in state, right? And I have to give you credit because you're at least being thoughtful about that.
Yeah.
Right? Where I think a lot of kids are, when they're young and you don't have a lot of life experience, you're 18, you're trying to think about what am I supposed to do with the rest of my life? And you're kind of probably overwhelmed and just end up starting to just, I'll go here, I'll go there. And before you know it, if you just made a slightly different decision, had a little bit more insight from someone who was looking out for you, you could have maybe saved 5 years of paying off of college. It's kind of wild. And
that's the thing. A lot of people, especially when you're younger, you don't realize the how much debt limits you. I personally wasn't taught that in high school.
Yeah.
And they don't put enough of an emphasis on it because they're always pushing you, oh, you got to go to college, this and that. Like, there is no other option.
Yeah.
But, I mean, a lot of people make really good money in trades. And it's like a skill that will never not be needed. So, and there's these kids who are going to, like, undergraduate programs having no idea what they want to do. And you're basically just throwing money away. So one thing I would...
Paying for one good party after another, basically.
And if I were to give anyone advice that's a little bit younger, I would say make sure you want to do what you want to do. Because I've had friends who have switched careers like midway through. So they're paying basically a full 4 years, plus 2 more because they switched midway through of tuition.
Yeah.
Which is a lot.
Yeah, especially if your credits aren't...
Yeah, and don't be afraid to take a gap year out of high school too. I know counselors are going to push you to go to college immediately. Like, how's your application? Always asking you questions about college.
Yeah.
But honestly, know what you want to do.
You got to watch out for counselors. I'm sure there's many, many wonderful counselors out there for school.
Of course.
I personally think of them as salespeople.
It seems like it.
Right?
Very much so.
I wonder how much commission potentially
Yeah.
a counselor may be getting to navigate, hey, if you get X amount of, I don't know, maybe I'm totally just talking out of my butt right now, but when I think your job is probably being, the success of your job is being assessed based on how many kids are enrolling.
Yeah.
You have to be a little skeptical, I think, right? And I remember when I was taking some classes at a local community college, they unnecessarily put me in a remedial math course where I ended up later taking some courses at a different community college. And they go, oh, no, you never needed to take those.
Yeah.
You can go right into pre-calculus.
Well, that's the issue I'm facing too with applying to PT school. I never took stats or phys 2 when I had a bunch of courses that I didn't need to take.
Yeah.
So even just like the counselors in that department, you really got to do your research.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to knowing what you want to do. Because if not, you could be wasting a lot of money and not even knowing it. Or
Knowing what you want to do, though, is easier said than done,
Of
right?
course, of course.
But to your point, you take a year off.
Yeah.
Maybe for some, that means join the military, right?
Yeah,
It could be
yeah.
like my buddy Steve, he, at the time, even now, I still kind of laugh at just thinking about how much he's set himself up for success with, basically putting 0% down, crazy interest rates on a home, getting school paid for, getting housing allowances while he was going to school.
Yeah.
And I know he complains about his time in the military, but the guy traveled all over the world.
Exactly.
He was in Japan, Brazil, Singapore.
That's awesome.
All over, right?
I'm jealous.
So I'm like, okay, I get it. You were on the sea for long periods of time. That must have been rough.
Yeah.
But you sent me a video of you cliff diving in Guam.
Yeah.
So couldn't have
How
been
much you
that.
really struggling.
Couldn't have been that bad, right? Anyways, but yeah, I think you're right to when you get out of. If you're not feeling very passionate about a particular direction when you're getting out of high school, it's probably the sensible thing to just take a step back.
Yeah.
Right?
Or go to community college too. You're
Yeah.
saving tons, and that's what I did. I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
But my first 2 years were in community college, and I'll never understand why kids will go straight to undergrad or to a university because you're saving a ton of money through community college. I actually took some classes at my Waubonsie class that were way better
Really?
taught at Waubonsie than my university.
No
So
kidding.
It has nothing to do with
Shout out to Waubonsie Community College.
Yeah. Well, the quality of education is not any different, and whoever tells you different is not right.
Ryan's just taking on the universities.
I'm just being transparent based on
Yeah.
my experience, but
Yeah.
they're honestly just as good. You'll be saving a ton of money. You won't even have to pay for living costs if you're going to your community college. So it
Yeah.
all adds up.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these large schools, you're not necessarily paying for the teacher as much as you're paying for the fact that the school is gigantic.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
It's like being a member of Planet Fitness versus Lifetime Fitness.
Yeah.
Right? When you're getting giant pools and rock wall climbing and racquetball courts and smoothie bars and you're going to have to pay a little bit more, right?
Yeah,
But
of
the
course.
question is, do you need the racquetball courts? Do you need the smoothies, right? So, sometimes you just have to take all of it, right?
Yeah.
Even though it'd be nice to a la carte these certain things, you get the big school, hey, you don't really want to watch the big football games, well,
I know.
tough luck. That's the school you went to. You're going to be paying for some of that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly, 100%.
So, but
You'll be paying for years.
Moral paying for
Years
Ryan
and
says
years and
painfully.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we'll start a over and under kind of like betting pool of how long Ryan's going to be in PT school or applying to PT school, right? No, I'm joking. I want to see you be successful, but it is a bit, if I'm being honest, it's a bit of a win-win situation for me because you're an awesome personal trainer. Your clients love you. So either you stay here for a couple more years, which is I'm perfectly happy with.
Yeah.
Or sooner rather than later, you get accepted.
Yeah.
This is Danny just begging you to stay.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, I'll be the first. I'll be the first to congratulate you. I think
appreciate
you're
it.
going to be really good at it. And even when I connect with some of your clients just to check in on how things are going, a lot of them have noticed the care you take with some of the injury prevention stuff, especially some of your older clients, like middle-aged clients. I think they've noticed in general that's something you have an aptitude for, but especially ever since you started shadowing Dr. Joe.
Oh, 100%. That has made like a huge difference in the way I train in personally. I've been doing a lot more like corrective stuff. I've been doing a lot more exercises that he showed me, like kind of closed chain exercises, stuff like that. So it's been helping a ton, and my clients have been liking it. Like John, his lower back's been hurting, and he's not completely.
John D?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not completely pain-free.
Well, and
but
he has that whole thing where...
Yeah, he has
I think it was a car accident that shattered his like lumbar spine.
Yes. So even just being able to do movements for that and he tweaked it, and making him feel at least a little bit of relief is just awesome as a personal trainer to be able to do that for your client.
So Ryan, 8 months ago, a year ago, not having shadowed Dr. Joe for 120 hours.
Yeah.
To now, what has been a situation with one of your clients that you've been able to navigate successfully from what you've learned, and maybe you wouldn't have been able to have helped them in that way?
Oh, for sure.
Prior.
Like, even before, like prior to Dr. Joe, I mean, I knew some exercises that would increase range of motion, and like every personal trainer should, but even just shadowing Dr. Joe allowed me to pick up on new exercises, a little bit new techniques, a little bit of the why instead of just doing the exercise, knowing like the understanding behind it. And honestly, I really enjoy it. So being able to kind of take someone from a little bit of pain, for example, like Leanne's shoulder, just increasing. She has a torn rotator cuff, but
Like fully torn?
Yeah, it needs to be surgically repaired.
Oh, wow.
But just increasing that, even though
That's brutal.
she's not going to have that range of motion, but even just increasing it slightly and preventing it from stiffening up a little bit, has made a big difference. And then she's told me that she's noticed it a lot more. It's a lot more pain free, and she can do a little bit more stuff with it, even just in her daily life. So.
And that's things you picked up from working with Dr. Joe?
Yeah, just like range of motion stuff, and just exercises in general. And like I said, the understanding of why this exercise is helping to a certain extent.
Yeah, so I worked for a physical therapy clinic as well back in the day because I also thought about going to PT school. And so I worked as a technician for 3 to 6 months. I wasn't there all that long. But it was amazing to me how much, I'll be honest, I was a bit cocky at the time and sort of thought I knew most of the things PTs knew, right? But I was very shocked at the level of modifications that they're familiar with, right? So, you and I might think rotator cuff and go, oh, well, cable external rotation, right? A lot of people know that one, right? Just doing this here. But they might go, hey, isometric against the wall. Or, hey, that's too much, bring your arm in. Now isometric against the wall, right? Or, whatever, right? I think we have to stay in our wheelhouse, so we should try to help people when we can, but not guinea pig. But, I would say most personal trainers are going to go, all right, I have my A, B, and C exercises to help with this thing, where physical therapists oftentimes are, it's like A to Z, right? There's just so many nuanced ways that they can modify something, not to mention all the just intricate manual therapy stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Those are the things that have blown my mind the most of working with physical therapists and, and with Dr. Joe is the manual therapy, the muscle energy techniques, where he's like, twist here and lift your arm here and contract your abs.
Exactly.
And you're just like, what? Why can I use my hip different now? That just is that's the kind of thing where I'll just tell my clients, I'm like, just go meet with them.
Yeah.
It's above my pay grade, right? Like, this is not the kind of thing I can help you with, right? And so I'm sure I'm happy with the path I've chosen, but I'm also excited for you, small amount of jealousy in the sense that you're going to have an opportunity to incorporate some of that stuff into, not some of that stuff, a lot of that stuff someday, to truly, I mean, chiropractors, physical therapists in many ways are like healers.
Yeah.
There's probably not many things closer to them than just being healers.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, at least as far as the physical body, the
Yeah.
musculoskeletal system, right? It's a little bit different when we're talking about medicine, but that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So someday, maybe 20, 30 years from now, when you get accepted to PT school, you'll be able to help people with that.
And afterwards, I'll teach you a thing or two.
Oh,
maybe.
There we go.
Maybe.
Touche. So as a personal trainer, you know, you're still doing it now. What have been some things that, you know, when we brought you on about 2 years ago, this was your first personal training job.
Yeah.
What has changed for you from when you started to now, and how you view fitness, view working with people? What's changed?
Honestly, it's just my love for helping people increased even more. And I love that personal training in general is like problem solving. So someone comes to you with a problem, and you're there to guide them in kind of a safe and effective manner to help them accomplish their goals. Honestly, it's just my love for like helping people and training people just increased that much more over these past 2 years. And even when I'm studying for PT, this is like my clients, I tell this all the time to them. They're like my break. They're like the positive part of my day.
Yeah.
It's because I love personal training so much that it's just the best part of my day rather than having to study all the time, you know. I know, Danny.
Don't leave, Ryan. Dude, that's amazing though, and I love hearing that, because I remember when I interviewed you on the phone, you had mentioned you just got out of school and you were thinking about going to chiropractic school. And I was like, well, I typically don't hire people who are thinking of already going back to school, right? Because what am I going to have you for a year?
Yeah.
You know, but I remember at the time you were like, no, this is really something I want to do. I really want to help people. I've always wanted to be a personal trainer. I do eventually want to go back to school, but and obviously that comes through with your clients.
Yeah.
You are very good at connecting with your clients too. I have to say, I can't tell sometimes whether you laugh a lot or you're incredibly good at fake laughing, because I am not good at fake laughing. Like sometimes I'll have clients make a joke and my best response will be I'll just smile more, or I'll go, oh, that's awesome, right? You know, I'm kind of outing myself. But do you get what I'm saying, Nico?
Yeah.
The client relationships are my favorite part about it.
Do you really just chuckle this much, Ryan?
No, it's genuinely because like I care about them so much that it's almost like they're like your friend, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just, and a lot of them are pretty funny.
Yeah, you do have some funny clients.
I do have a lot. All my clients are amazing, but I do have some funny ones.
Yeah. And like Tamika.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out Tamika.
Shout out to Tamika.
She'll love that one.
She will love that one. Yeah, she's awesome. So Ryan, thank you so much for coming on today, man.
Thank you for having me.
I think we did okay.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit more serious than that, but that was good.
It was mostly professional. Yeah. Right.
So behind closed doors, it'll come out.
Right. Just turn the camera off. No, but seriously, man, I wish you all the best in your endeavor to get onto physical therapy school. And while you're here, we're happy to have you, man. It's a blessing.
Thank you so much. I love this job. Like I said, I love personal training. I love helping people in general, so it's a dream.
And you love me.
And I love you, Danny.
Oh, yeah. All right. On that note.
Close the camera.